Well, welcome everyone to the medical student panel. I'm so glad to have you all here. And I just want to really just start with some introductions from everyone, and I can put it in the chat too. But hoping for you to introduce who you are, where you are from, your undergrad institution and degree, and then your current role in medical school. And I am popping that in the chat right now. And anyone who wants to start can go ahead.
I can start. So I'm Brenda. I am from Westminster, Colorado. I went to undergrad at CU Boulder and majored in business and finance specifically, and currently am a third-year medical student at CU Anschutz.
I'll go next. My name's Laveen Khoshnaw. Sorry, I'm in the same room as Omar.
I think it's muted though.
That's weird. Okay.
Does it do the same for you, Omar?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Let me go next while she's trying to figure that out. All right, so my name is Omar. Let's see, where you're from. I'm actually originally from, I guess you could say, Colorado Springs. Grew up in Jordan, Oman though. I've been here for like the last 10 years of my life, and I went to UCCS for my undergraduate, and I got my biomedical science degree there. And I am currently a third-year medical student at Colorado School of Medicine Anschutz Medical Campus.
Thank you. Maybe Dana.
I can go next. Yeah. Sorry, I was figuring out the mute button. So my name is Dana. I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York. I went to Brooklyn College. I majored in chemistry, and I'm also a third-year medical student at Colorado School of Medicine.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, I'll give it a go now.
Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. We had some technical difficulties being in the same room. So my name is Laveen Khoshnaw. I am a second, technically third-year medical student here at the University of Colorado School of Medicine as well. I also went to UCCS, yay, go Mountain Lions, loved it there. And I studied biomedical sciences and political science.
Great, thank you. And it's great to meet all of you. So the first question for everyone is, why did you decide to pursue a career in medicine?
That is such a good question. I think such a huge question. I have like a ton of different
We
reasons.
have one more panelist that's going to be here with us too. She's just getting ready to do all her getting all her stuff set up. So just to let you know, that's who just showed up as well.
Great, yeah, thanks, Omar. Cool, and we'll pull her in when she's ready.
Yeah, thanks. So like I said, I think I started. Oh, hey. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, thank you. Hi, everyone. Sorry, I'm late. I'm coming from the clinic. My name is Amira. I'm a freshman at CU. I went to the University of Denver for undergrad and studied biochem, and now at CU.
Great, thank you. Welcome. Go ahead, Brenda. Thank you.
Thank you. So like I said, I started in business and thought I was going to do something in business and finance specifically, but like halfway through college, I wasn't super satisfied, I guess, and I ended up getting an internship at Medtronic or Covidien, which is a medical device company, and did a lot of shadowing there and got to meet a lot of doctors through that internship, and really was more interested in that side of things than the accounting finance stuff that I was doing, and kind of just like went for it. And I got a lot of encouragement from people, which I appreciated because it was definitely really scary to completely shift 180, and have not looked back since. A lot of different things, of course, played into it. I've loved science growing up, and healthcare and helping people has always been like a huge thing for me. But long story short.
Yeah, great, thank you. And I think it's great to hear a story of someone that didn't just was born and decided to go into medical school. Like you just started somewhere else, and then you kind of changed your mind. So that's great to hear. And to repeat the question, so it's, why did you decide to pursue a career in medicine? And I will put that in the chat as well. So whoever wants to chime in next.
I can go next. I kind of didn't have Brenda's roundabout, like exploring other options. I kind of just went in knowing that I wanted to be in healthcare. And I wasn't really sure whether it was medicine or dentistry or like PA, NP, all of those options. Again, like really enjoyed healthcare, really enjoyed the sciences, and worked with a lot of physicians in primary care as well. And that kind of gave me a little bit of an inside view on what goes on in medicine, and just super fascinated by all of the things that we were learning, but also the fact that you can help people and that you can sort of make a change in the community in that way. So yeah.
Great, thank you.
So I'm going to try speaking out of Omar's mic only so that we don't deal with that dilemma from earlier. But I'm kind of similar to Dana in the sense that I was pretty set on wanting to be in the healthcare world. I think that a lot of my driving forces for why medicine over other fields was that I also was really passionate about education, specifically public education. So I thought that the role of a doctor would allow me to really educate my patients, kind of give them the autonomy that they need to make their own healthcare decisions. And I thought that that was going to be a really fun platform for me to do that. It's been really gratifying for me. And in my short clinical experiences, I've gotten a lot of feedback from patients that they appreciate that kind of communication. So it's definitely my favorite part.
That's great, thank you. Yeah, I know whenever I go to the doctor, I do appreciate them kind of explaining everything, because I always go into it not really knowing what's happening. So that's great.
I will also speak from Omar's microphone, so hopefully this isn't too confusing to whoever's watching the recording later. I think I knew pretty early on that I did like science as well, and I like talking to people, but I think what really solidified it for me was kind of learning that as a physician, you can also sort of, in addition to being like a clinician and seeing patients, you can also take on a lot of different leadership roles. So I know that other people on this call are familiar with the undergraduate pre-health program through the CU Anschutz medical campus, which Laveen, Omar, and I are all alumni of. But I think through that program, I really got to see that I could do things in physician leadership, from like quality improvement to medical education, and then something that I'm really passionate about personally is mentorship. Especially for historically underrepresented first generation students who just don't have access to even knowing, what are the steps to get to medical school. And then I think a lot of that mentorship is lacking in higher education and for medical students, residents, and then like junior faculty members. So I think that's kind of knowing that I could pursue both of those together really solidified wanting to go to medical school for me. And hopefully sort of paving the way or making it a little bit easier for other first-gen students to get to their goals of higher education and healthcare, because I think it's just such a convoluted system. There's so many systemic issues that we know of that kind of prevent people from being able to reach that. So that's sort of where my passions lie, I think, and medical school so far has been a great way to sort of combine the two.
Great, thank you for the answer. Yes, and welcome, Kimberly. Thanks for joining us in our conversation. We are just wrapping up the question about why did you decide to pursue a career in medicine, and Omar is next.
Awesome. So the reason I kind of chose late, actually. I chose more in college. In high school, I wanted to do other things. One of the biggest things I wanted to do was actually become a mechanic, and I loved working on cars and loved just doing a bunch of things on cars. I replaced an entire engine in my previous Civic that I owned, and did that over a weekend with a bunch of friends. And I decided I would rather keep that as a hobby instead of a job, because after you do things for a while, you start to kind of lose that passion, which I didn't want to do that with working on cars, especially because I liked them so much. So while I was in college, I decided that medicine was the right route for me because it was one of the very few things that could keep my attention, and it kept me motivated to see patients and to like instill change in their lives. And that's one of the things that I really hope to do on as a future physician, is to make sure that every single patient that I meet, I touch I touch their lives in such a manner that, you know, I change it for at least a little bit and or for the rest of their life.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. Cool. So moving forward, the next question, has your plan or area of interest changed since you first began medical school? So specifically the area of interest within medical.
I can go first on this one too. So I came in with a little bit of an open mind to like everything. So I would be okay with doing whatever it is that I end up doing at the very end. And by the end of it, I started to realize that surgery was way more interesting to me than other things. And then within surgery, orthopedics became like the #1 choice for me, because I find it to be the most gratifying. It's almost like being a mechanic too, because as soon as you fix somebody up, they pretty much are able to walk, or they're able to get up and do their thing that they weren't able to do before, pitch a baseball, throw a football, something like that. And because of it, that's the reason why I went from open-minded all the way to orthopedics.
That's great. And I like how you compared it to working on cars as well. That's awesome.
I can go next. I came in thinking OBGYN, which is like women's health, and like reproductive health as well. And was still, they kind of tell you throughout medical school, like, please keep an open mind and like be open to different experiences, just because you really never know where you might end up in the end. And so kind of went through medical school in the same way, just trying to keep an open mind and seeing if that's something that I would want to do for a really, really long time. And dabbled in a couple other specialties, and then eventually landed back on OBGYN and women's health. And kind of like what Omar was saying, it's a little bit of like both surgical and clinic, which is also a differentiating factor that you kind of take into consideration in medical school, whether you're more hands-on versus cerebral. And so, yeah, it was a good mix of the two, and I enjoyed my rotation, and that's where I ended up.
Great, thank you.
I can go next. I think I too like started out trying to keep an open mind, had an open mind. Then third year hit, I was all over the place, loved everything. And I'm still all over the place. But I think the one thing before medical school, the first kind of hospital I got to tour was Children's Hospital. So originally I was like, okay, heavy leaning like pediatrics. And then I hit my like adult medicine rotation and was like, for the first time, like cried with the patient. And I just was so moved and could not forget that kind of experience. And so I think right now I'm currently like, it's called med peds, meaning that I would be working with adults and pediatrics or children. So that's what I'm planning on applying to. We'll see. I might change tomorrow. So ask me again, like in a couple months, but the one thing I think that hasn't changed since beginning medical school though, is my interest in working with the underserved community. And that's something that I want to pursue and work with in whatever capacity that is, in whatever field I choose moving forward.
Thank you.
So this is such a difficult question. Amira and I are both in our kind of the beginning of our third year, so our clinical time, or being in the clinical space throughout medical school, and we're getting asked this left and right. Okay, so what are you interested in by all our new preceptors, all our new attending? So I think about this question every day, and I feel like I resonate with what Brenda's saying, where it's like everything is captivating, everything's interesting, which is refreshing, right? It's nice to at least have that be the end of the spectrum and not like, oh man, I am 3 years deep and I hate everything. So that's good. But I don't know, I want to be able to have lasting relationships, but I also want to be able to potentially work with my hands. You know, I'm kind of sifting through that. I came in very set on primary care and preventative medicine, but not really knowing much else. So for the sake of this being a panel, I think that one strong piece of advice I have is really just exploring the world of medicine, any opportunity you get. I got paired with a rheumatologist for my foundation's preceptorship, which is like a first year kind of invitation to the clinical space. And I had no idea what rheumatology even was. So, just kind of really understanding what the world of medicine even contains, I think is probably a piece of advice I'd have as I continue to navigate this myself, but still have my open mind.
Yeah, I think it's hard. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. I'm just saying things.
I think it's hard from the sort of beginning early clinical experience. I think something that I was also told by one of my preceptors recently, which I think was was a good way to put things into perspective, is that whatever you end up choosing, you have to be okay with doing the thing that you don't like about it every single day. And so I think there's a lot of things that, for example, in clinic, as in the outpatient setting, knowing that there's just extra charting, for example, that you probably have to do, you kind of have to be okay with that, and sort of in addition to, I guess, liking everything else about that specialty. So I thought that was just kind of an interesting perspective from the other side, especially as someone who is sort of in the same boat of Laveen, where everything is really intriguing right now. And that kind of picking out okay, what do I not mind doing on a day-to-day basis? Or what do I kind of want my life to look like in the future? I think something that you sort of see as you move into medicine too is that there's no one way to doing something. And even within one specialty, there's a plethora of different things that you can do. And you can break up your clinical time versus doing other things like research or medical education or whatever it is. And so I think taking into account not just what do I like, but also what do I see fitting into my life moving forward is kind of a cool perspective that you don't really get until you're in that clinical setting. And then you can start thinking, okay, this is what I like about this, or this is what I want to plan for in the future. But yeah, it's hard. It's definitely hard to tell what you want right off the bat. I think we have classmates who came in who were like, I know I want to do surgery, and then they ended up doing surgery. But then there's always that story of someone who comes in set on absolutely no pediatrics, and then they fall in love with a pediatrics specialty, and that's what just ends up happening.
Great. Thank you all for that.
I think just to add, sorry, for those prospective students, I just want to echo everything that Amira and Laveen have also mentioned. I think for those who know exactly what they want to do, that's great. And also remember to kind of go in knowing that that could change. And also for those who don't know what they want to do, totally okay, because I think that's kind of the beauty of medical school, is trying to figure that out. And eventually you'll all find something that you will contribute quickly to. So.
Great. Yes. Okay, so the next question is, has anything about medical school surprised you? And I will put this in the chat.
I can go first here. I'd say the entirety of medical school kind of surprised me, beginning to end, because it is very, very different than undergrad, very different than high school, very different than everything. The way that you learn is different. The way you interact with people is different. The way that you see patients is different. And the way that it's different is different because in every single scenario and stuff is just, it's really interesting because it's just different. I don't know how to explain it better than that. Maybe you guys can put it into words better than I can, but it's one of those things where you have to go through it in order for you to understand it. But the learning specifically is probably the biggest change from undergrad, because a lot of people describe it as drinking from a fire hydrant using a straw. And that's pretty much exactly how it feels the first 2 years, because there's such a large amount of information that you have to pretty much just shove in your head. And one of the biggest things to put it in perspective is my entire biomedical science degree was taught in 2 weeks during one of our, during our M2M, Molecules to Medicine class, which was only half a semester technically long. So it was just an interesting perspective to kind of get that. And then on top of it, once you start seeing patients and stuff, that's also another perspective, because the patients becomes the people who teach you. It's not books anymore, because you see things in books for clinical presentations of certain diseases, but patients do not present exactly that way. If someone has diabetes, they might have this weird rash that tells you they have diabetes, which is so not what the clinical picture looks like. And so just learning your patients and just, what medical school has to offer is just perspective and a lot of experience. So once you get that and figure out kind of what you want to do, and then on top of it, how you want to do it, / how you interact with patients, how you learn to study, and all that good stuff, it becomes an exciting beast to tackle every once in a while. Other times it's rough, so just because of the amounts of everything that's going on. But yeah, I think that's all I got.
I'll go next.
Yeah.
While you have your mic up. So I think the transition between whatever field you come from before, whether it's undergraduate or like a gap year or whatever, into medical school is already like definitely, like Omar was saying, a beast that you have to tackle in some way. But I think the thing that surprised me the most was how much you have to really self-advocate. And I say that as potential prospective students, just so you can keep that in the back of your mind. Even though like we weren't handed things in college, that's not the case at all. I think that in the professional environment that is medical school, you do a lot of digging to be able to kind of find the opportunities that you want to go for, which was surprising to me because I thought coming onto like a massive campus such as CU Anschutz and having, all this community around you, that every day I would be like, do you want to do this? Do you want to look at this? Do you want to see this kind of thing? But it's really up to you to stake those opportunities out yourself. And so I just highly recommend kind of keeping that in the back of your mind. Something that surprised me for sure.
Thank you.
I think, sorry, Dana. I think to add on to what Laveen said too, I think one other surprising thing is the other side of it, where there's just so many opportunities available. So if you come in with this kind of idea, most likely there are resources to help you make it happen. So I think that has been a very pleasant surprise. Although you'd have to self-advocate, I think, the resources and support is there. You just kind of have to know what you would like to do. So there's that. I think another thing that has surprised me a lot, I think as a third year medical student, near the end of third year now, is just how much I am now realizing I've evolved as a student in medicine. It's been kind of crazy. I think I am just only beginning to reflect now, but I think seeing at the very beginning, it almost seemed so impossible, to make it to med school and then now to make it through med school. But now we're like at this point where like I can look back and be like, oh my gosh, everything just happened. And I feel like I've learned all these things that's just in the moment, it's just so hard to recognize. So that's been surprising. And it's been a very thrilling experience, to say the least. So
Thank you.
Yeah, I kind of just wanted to go off of what Omar was saying, how everything is very new and very surprising. And with each passing year, like throughout medical school, you grow so much and there's so much to learn that there's a learning curve for every single year that passes by. And so like when you first enter medical school, there's a learning curve for how to study and how to manage all of that information. And then once you get into the clinical space, there's a learning curve for how to interact with patients and how to be a provider and a primary care person for these people. And so I think like recognizing that you're not going to know a lot and you're not going to know everything before entering, and just being open to that challenge and not feeling like, it's a feeling of overwhelming sensation that like there's so much going on and there's so much happening. But just know that there's also a lot of like camaraderie around amongst your peers, and there's a lot of support. And that if you're feeling it, then someone else is probably feeling it as well. And if you're struggling, then somebody else is struggling as well. And just to like be honest and develop that community around you, because those are the people that are going to be able to like help you throughout. And at the end of the day, at the end of this whole journey, you guys will be like colleagues, and you'll be like peers, and we'll reach out to each other for whatever specialties those people are going into. And it's super exciting.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. I think we had one more, right? Perfect.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I was just gonna piggyback kind of off of both Brenda and, I mean, well, everyone has pretty much covered everything, I think, but I would say don't underestimate how like adaptable you are, and how quickly you learn, because it was definitely like coming into the preclinical space and being like, oh my gosh, I have to learn all of like the kid needs in essentially 2 weeks or something like that, which is how it was for our curriculum. It's like, how am I going to do this? And then you realize really fast that all you need to do is kind of chunk it into digestible pieces, and you can get through it pretty, maybe not so efficiently all the time, but you'll get through it. And I think I was just always surprised by like how nervous I would be before some big change, and then realizing, you know, like I have developed skills over the years to kind of cope with this and figure it out. And I think something that kind of goes off of that is like, you kind of have to trust the process, in the sense that like things that's being done in the curriculum, you're like, I don't really understand what this is teaching me, or which they do always make it clear, but I think it can be hard to sort of let yourself trust the process. But then you walk into the clinical space and you're like, okay, like I have done a mock interview before, so like I have the skills, I know how to talk to people at baseline. And so you kind of just build upon those, which I was always catching myself being a little bit surprised that like the things that I was able to accomplish, or that I could see my classmates accomplishing, and being like, wow, okay, like we're picking things up, we're learning, especially as a lot of schools are moving towards a shorter and shorter preclinical year. I think that can be a little bit nerve-wracking, but knowing that they're not going to send you into the clinical space without the appropriate skill set to be able to succeed.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone. And welcome, Jonathan, to the conversation. I did want to open it now. I do have a couple more questions, but just to make sure that, you know, the students that are on with us today, if they have any questions, feel free to ask the panelists or put it in the chat, and I'll make sure to ask them that way. But does anyone have any questions currently? Perfect.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Oh, my name's Jonathan. I usually go by Johnny. I am interested in going to Anschutz, starting to apply this upcoming summer. I'm hoping to get into the physician assistant program. Sorry, I just got out of taking an exam right now, so I wasn't able to join on time. But
okay.
I just kind of wanted to hear a little bit more from how kind of applications look like for you guys in that process, and some tips and advice. I'm a first generation student, so I'm still kind of navigating everything, figuring out what the best way to do things are. So I would appreciate any help.
Great question. Thank you. Yeah. Whoever wants to answer, feel free.
Hi, Johnny. If you haven't picked it up yet, we're Amira and I are speaking through Omar's mic, so sorry that his has lit up. First of all, kudos to you and congratulations for making it this far as a first generation student. All of us on this call are first gen students, so we resonate deep with the difficulties and the trials that brings. So very proud of you. In terms of how to navigate, was that your question? How to navigate the space, right? I think do not be afraid to ask for any help, any resources, anything you could possibly need. Because there are people, like we were saying earlier, there are people willing to help for sure. It's just your job to look for it. So it can be really easy to get overwhelmed and like fall like through the groups that are going through and just kind of like try to do your own thing. But as soon as you realize something is just different to you because you've never seen it and you've never heard about it and nobody in your circles has ever talked about it, go stake out somebody that knows what's going on and kind of get those tips and tricks. So Amira and I are like incoming third years, and these outgoing third years, Dinah, Omar, and Brenda have been huge assets to us. So that's just like within our collegiate space, right? Like just with our classmates. There are resources all over campus. And I think like now with COVID kind of like going down a little bit, I think going to campus and just kind of checking out the offices and stuff is probably not a bad idea if you don't know anybody else who's kind of going through the process or who has. We can't speak necessarily too much about the specifics of like applying to the PA program unless other people have experience with that. But everything is the same when it comes to applying to these professional programs. You know, it's preparing the high quality application and presenting yourself as a candidate dedicated to the field that you want to be in, which just by being on this panel, it sounds like you've already got some of that covered. So anyway, my point to that is just make sure that you're staking out the resources, putting yourself first when it comes to this, and not being overwhelmed by what the journey brings.
To add on to that too, so I helped one of my friends with their PA application, and so I know you guys are switching from the GRE to the other PMCAT or whatever it is, which looks a lot more like the MCAT now instead of just taking the GRE, which is a lot of people thought it was super random to take. The biggest advice I can give you for that is to start early if you haven't taken it already. I know everyone says that, but it's really important to get questions in. And I feel like just repetition with questions, repetition with the practice and the way that you take that test is going to super help you out, get the score that you want, and it'll make the entire thing a little less stressful too. And then on top of it, once you get that score back and you're applying and everything, just remember, this is an entire year process. So you got to pace yourself. Because with applications, after you submit it, it's not like a job application where you hear back in a month. Sometimes these programs take multiple months. I know for CU, I think I heard back from them like 6 months later after I interviewed, which took a very long time. And some schools, they'll get you, they'll get back to you pretty quick too. Some of them actually got a result back to me like the next day. But just know the entire process is very, very, very slow. And I know for the PA side, it's a lot of the same thing too. Don't get discouraged if you do get put on any wait lists or whatnot, because that's still an opportunity for you to get accepted to the school. And then as you're doing your application, again, doing your essays early, doing the secondary essays early for any of the schools that send it to you is like absolutely like a must, because the entire admissions process is on a rolling admissions basis, which means as soon as they get the application, it's first come, first serve of who gets to review it. So if you're second in line, you'll be second reviewed. And if they like you enough, they'll send you out an interview. So you want that to happen super quickly, because the quicker that you get those interview invites earlier in the year, the more likely that you are to get accepted into a program. As it gets further out into the year, unfortunately, it does become less likely that you'll get accepted, but that doesn't make the likelihood of it being zero. So there's still a chance of you getting in regardless of the time frame that you apply to and finish your application. But it is super, super important to apply and make sure everything gets in there as early as possible. And if the application opens up, January 1st, then try to get it submitted by January 1st and then go from there. Make sure you stay on top of your letter writers too, because they tend to like to space out how long of a time frame they have to actually write it. For me specifically, I actually used to tell my letter writers that I needed it a month or 2 months in advance from when I actually did, just in case it rolls over. Just because I don't consider it lying at that point, just because sometimes you gotta work with their schedules, and pushing them a little more can enable you to get that letter a little earlier and cause you less stress too.
Yeah, sorry, before
No,
you
go ahead.
Omar, I know one like key distinction between pre-PA and medical school is PA school requires a lot more clinical hours. That's like a little bit more of like a hard and fast requirement. I'm not sure what it is off the top of my head, but I think that though that is oftentimes more difficult, I think, to find opportunities to be in the clinical space. And so if you could, like I dropped in the chat, because I don't think you were on when we were talking about it earlier, but the undergraduate pre-health program offers like internships for students. And so that's one way to do it. You could do like a medical assistant or a CNA job, and that will kind of help you pick up those clinical hours that you just kind of need as a baseline requirement to apply, which I just know from my like pre-PA friends that they were focused a lot more on like actually getting those hours, that's less so for medical school, I would say. So kind of those more like boxes that you have to check, sometimes you just kind of have to go through that and make sure you've checked that box, and you wouldn't want something like Omar was talking about, like the timing of your application to be like hindering your abilities to get an interview or to get an acceptance in the future. So that's just something to keep in mind. I know it requires a lot of long-term planning and sort of preemptive planning. It's never too late. But I think having those things kind of on your mind can help focus like the last however many years you have of college, or determining how many years you want to take between college and applying, and sort of what you can do to enrich your application in the meantime.
I think everyone's covered like the logistical like part of it like so well. I obviously don't have much experience with the PA application like cycle itself, but I do want to do a mini plug for like the mental and like well-being side of things. I think applying to any like higher education like graduate program, especially being a first generation, can be very nerve-wracking and is just a long and tough process in general. I found myself like doing a lot of like self-doubting and all that to say, I think that there is a lot of support out there. You can do it. Just, you know, I think it's a lot of like really sitting with yourself and finding out more about yourself. I'm not even sure how to go about this. Basically, just take care of yourself, I think is what I'm trying to say through this process. I think it can be hard, and know that it's going to be hard and that you're going to be okay. So also, I do know some like PA friends too. So if you want to shoot me an email to, I can get you guys connected, who's at Anschutz. So I'll drop my email in the chat.
Great, thanks so much. Okay, next question. Kimberly did have a great question. Let me find it here in the chat. So this one is, how many medical schools did everyone apply to on average, and how many did you get accepted to?
I'll go first. So I was lucky enough to qualify for the fee assistance program, which gives you 15 free applications. I don't know if that's still the same because that was like 3 years ago, I guess now. So that gave me 15 free applications, and I paid for an extra 4. So I applied to 19 schools, which I guess is on the low end from my experience when I was applying with other students, just because I had like some students applying to like 80+ programs. So, and I have a lot of opinions about that. That is too much. I think that first of all, you need to really research your schools. I didn't do that. I was going based off of like all types of like these stats and stuff. I was like, which ones am I going to mostly get into, kind of thing. And I don't think you should ever do that. I think you should think about what school is going to fit you best. But anyway, I won't go down that rabbit hole too much. So 19 schools, I got accepted into Anschutz first. It was my first interview and I got accepted first. Then I got 4 other interviews. But since I got accepted into Anschutz, I took it and ran. It was my top choice, and I pulled my application out sometime in October.
I can go next. So I applied to 26, I think, schools, which I think that was what my pre-health advisor at the University of Denver had recommended. So I think it's usually between like 15 to maybe upwards of 30 schools. I think it's usually average. And do keep in mind that, like Laveen was saying, if you can qualify for the fee assistance program, that's great because it is expensive to apply. You have a primary application fee, secondary application fee, and then if you get interviews, you're paying for your flight, whatever like dress clothes you need, you're paying for your hotel and like your stay in that city, which I think could be more accessible now that it seems like more interviews are being conducted virtually. But yeah, so I did 26 schools. I got 5 interviews and 1 acceptance. And so it really only takes 1 school, but I would echo what Laveen said about researching your school. So there's the MSAR, which is a subscription for like $25 a year, I think, that you can sign up for through the AMC, and that will give you stats on every medical school in the country of what the incoming average MCAT, GPA, and like different other kinds of stats that school had based off of like the actual makeup of their class. So a lot of people will use that as kind of the first like screening tool to see, okay, what is my MCAT at? What is my GPA at? Do I kind of fit what the average of the school was? But I would agree too, and like look at other programs that would be interesting to you. Look at the school's values, because that's huge, and that's something you can more directly talk about in your applications, especially those secondaries that come back. And just kind of see like, where would you want to not just be kind of trained and molded as a physician, but as a person too, because that's a pretty significant period of your life. It's like 4 years, and you're usually those are like formative moments, I suppose, in both you as a future physician and as a future person. So think about that as well.
I can go next. So this takes me back. I think that I did this like 4 years ago. So I don't know the exact numbers, but I can tell you it was between 15 to 20 schools, and I applied to both DO and MD. I actually got waitlisted on Anschutz as well. And that's why I got later acceptance to that one. But then total, I think I had like 5 or 6 interviews. And then I really can't remember all of these schools, but I think 3 acceptances, and then I pulled out of 2 of them. And then just kind of went from there. And then Anschutz was my top choice because my family's here. So I decided to come here. Biggest thing to tell you guys too is the fee assistance program is super helpful because it is super expensive when it comes to secondaries, especially because some schools charge an extra, I think it was $100 to $250 if I remember right, just for those secondary application fees, which you have to pay for on top of your primary application fees. And if you get the fee assistance program, and if you get accepted to it, it helps out a ton because it covers some of those secondary applications fee. And I got really lucky because I did get the fee assistance program. And I still remember it to this day. I don't know why it rubbed me the wrong way, but Tulane University, for some reason, only gave me 50% off my secondary application. So I still had to pay like $70 or something like that. And it just, I don't know why it rubbed me the wrong way, just because they really advocate for underrepresented minorities and everything like that. And I just thought it was an interesting way of doing that to somebody that, you know, does get the fee assistance program and stuff. But yeah, I think those are my stats. Are they accurate? Not too sure, but somewhere around there.
I was gonna add really fast, sorry, y'all. I know we're talking a lot. But oh, I just lost my train of thought. This is so frustrating. Okay, you can mute. I don't remember what I was gonna say.
I can just chime in really quickly. Because Omar was saying previously that a lot of these are rolling admissions, I was a late applier, and so it's gonna be fine if that happens to you. I kind of did the same thing. I think it's like the numbers are way off, but I did like 20 MDs, 10 DOs, and ended up interviewing here. And I think like a part of that is you're never going to really know the school until you come and you see your peers, you see the interviewers, you see how the interview went, you see the campus. And, you know, Colorado was one of those places where I kind of was just coming here and I used it as a practice interview because I was like, I'm not going to move to Colorado. I didn't even remember that I applied here, and I got the interview application and I was like, oh, I totally forgot. And so, came here, and like Brenda was saying, they gave us a tour of like Children's Hospital, which is beautiful. And you know, that's kind of what hooked me in. And I was like, okay, if I get in, I'm going. And that's what ended up happening. And a lot of schools will end up emailing you like, are you still interested? Just so they can keep considering you throughout the application process. And at that point is when I was like, no, like not yet. I've already made my choice. And so yeah, just keep an open mind and like do give certain places a shot, even if you're totally not considering it. And about the whole late application, like it's gonna be okay.
And to quickly just add mine, I'm glad someone remembers like you guys remember the fee assistance program, because I barely remember this process. So it sounds as if I probably applied to 15 schools as well, because I did use the FAP. So 15 schools, interviewed at 2 and got accepted to both and chose CU. So
Great. Thank you all so much. And yeah, as we move forward, did any of the students have further questions for the panel? Feel free to chime in or put it in the chat too. And also, I was wondering if someone would be able to find a link for that fee assistance program and put it in the chat. I'm going to try to save these links, and when I upload this recording to YouTube, I'll put those links in too. Cool. Okay. Well, I did have one. Oh, Johnny's got a question. So what are some of the things that helped you be more competitive when applying, And what are some of the scary and best moments that you remember when you were applying? Great questions. Anyone can answer. And if you don't got an answer, you don't have to say either.
All right, I'll go ahead and go. This is super, super interesting. So some of the things that helped me be more competitive while applying, I don't remember my application too well, to be honest, but I think I had on there quite a bit of volunteer hours. And I did also have hospice care volunteer hours, which I don't think a lot of people tend to go that route when they're doing volunteer work, just because it's kind of depressing, sad. But I wanted to see the grim and everything that medicine kind of had to offer. And so that's the reason why I went towards that, because I think that experience is pretty like empowering, and it's very, very interesting in the manner that everyone kind of hypes up medicine to be this amazing thing, but it's not that all the time that they have answers or treatment options. And so that's the reasons why I wanted to do it, just to see if I can be able to handle it, because I know most of the patients that I'd be seeing in the future are probably not going to make it, or if they will make it, they might have some debilitation afterwards. I hope that everyone that I would see, would be good as an orthopedic surgeon, but you never know. And so that's the reason why I put that on there. So I think that's the thing that made me the most competitive, was probably the volunteer work that I did with that. And the other thing would be the undergraduate pre-health program, because it's very CU heavy, and it's like it links CU to the underrepresented minorities in Colorado, pretty much all of Colorado. And so it helps you put that one step, it opens the door for you so you can take that one step into CU as an admissions, or as an applicant for their admissions. And then let's see. What are some of the scary and best moments that you remember when you were applying? So the scariest moment that I think I had was just leaving and going to my first interview in a brand new city for just 2 days, where I'm not there to like explore and stuff. It's just a couple of days, come back, go back to my normal life. I think that was super just funky. I didn't like it too much, because I'm like, we can just do this over a phone call. Why do I have to like pick up and leave and go over there? Like, if I get accepted and I like the school from the outside, we can make it work. But I found that to be one of the good things that happened, because once I was there, it was better suited to actually see the school and the surrounding area and the people that they actually serve. I think that's important, because it kind of tells you where the school's heart is and what they like to do. And then best moments when I was applying was going to Chicago, because everyone was telling me about deep dish pizza. And I was like, what the heck is deep dish pizza? And I tried it for the first time and I was not impressed. It's like, at best, so.
Okay, I'll go next. So for what made me stand out as a candidate, I'm a huge proponent of not being a box checker. And it sounds counterintuitive, especially to what like your pre-health societies and your advisors might tell you, like you have all these, and honestly, what we've also been talking about, you have these requirements that you need to meet, and like, yeah, you should probably meet your requirements, but I think that you should also continue to do things that make you excited and that you're passionate about. So while I had my clinical experience, I used to work for an optometrist when I was in college. Like I had all these healthcare like experiences and definitely like sought them out just because it was interesting to me. I also had other things that were really invigorating and stimulating. I worked on the campaign to fund money for District 11 in Colorado Springs, which is a public school education or a public school district. The 5th largest one in the state, actually. And we did that 2 years in a row, and it was like totally unrelated. I'm knocking on people's doors like, hey, will you vote for some more money for District 11? Absolutely unrelated to medicine, but something that was exciting to me. And I think that showing that you have interests that you follow and you work towards, and that you have like a purpose to serve, I think really makes you stand out as a candidate. I would like to think that that was one of my aspects that really had me stood out for sure. And then in terms of applying, like scary moments, I think the scariest moment for me was walking into Anschutz, because this was my first interview, walking into Anschutz and seeing all the other candidates, and they've got like master's degrees and like other careers, and they look fantastic, and they're speaking about all these crazy things they've done. They've got like 3 publications already in research, and I'm absolutely overwhelmed, and it completely threw me off. for like the first, I would say like hour. And thankfully they have like that buffer time with like orientation stuff, but I was like, oh my goodness, I'm not meant to be here. So that imposter syndrome totally creeps up in the application cycle, like Brenda, I think, was saying, doubting herself. And then something that was exciting, is that what it was? Oh, best moments. I saw a mutual friend on the application like route. Actually, Amira was another good one too. So people that I've connected with in different spaces before that I happened to find at like an interview or like a pre-interview social. It's so exciting to see other people who are in your circle like doing really well, also pursuing this really crazy, scary journey. It's just exciting to see that.
Yeah, I'll sorry, Omar, we'll just.
No, do your thing.
I think what Laveen actually took mine about being able to speak about something that you're passionate about is like huge, honestly. And I think the thing is if you can like authentically speak about something you're passionate about, that's going to come through. And I think that's something that, you know, all of these skills with like, I don't know, research or having clinical experience, those are things you're going to get in medical school or in professional health school. Like you're not expected to have all of those coming in. And so I think if you can showcase that, yeah, that you're just a like compassionate person who cares about a particular issue in, you know, your community or with a certain population of patients or whatever it is, or not even like related to medicine, but like say you, I don't know, really enjoy biking and you were able to teach a bunch of kids how to ride a bike. Like that's not something that's related to medicine, but that's something you can talk about if it's really important to you. And I can guarantee you, you can incorporate that into medicine in some shape or form in the future. And so I think that usually shines through without really much effort if it's something that you really love. And I think it's something that interviewers can pick up on really easily. And then in terms of like best and worst moments, I think, yeah, the scariest moment is definitely, I think I had my very first like MMI, then the multiple mini interviews at like a pretty well-ranked school. And I also felt incredibly out of place. I was like, every single person here is from an Ivy League. And like, I am just not, this is not my usual, like, I don't know, environment that I'm in. And so I think those are really scary. And the MMI, I think format was particularly scary for me because you only have like 10 minutes to make an impression on your interviewer. And you know, we can talk about, there's pluses and minuses to different kind of interview techniques, but that was definitely one that I found was like really, really terrifying. And then best moment is definitely just like having these small connections with people that you meet. And like some people who we ended up interviewing together, I think it was, maybe it was in Colorado, but it might have been at another school that we didn't end up going to the same school, but I still like keep in contact with them by social media. And like, we're all at different medical schools at the same year has been really cool too, to just be like, hey, I've got friends and colleagues all over the country that I was able to connect with one afternoon at an interview. And it's just been fun, like watching their journey and then also reconnecting with like people that I had gone to high school with, because I think Laveen, Omar and I all grew up in Colorado. And so like I had high school friends that I went to high school with, didn't go to the same college. And then we ended up in the same medical school or on the same interview day. And you're like, oh my God, like it's a familiar face. This feels so good. And that kind of helps ease your nerves too.
Thank you. Brenda or Dana, any thoughts?
Just to chime in on the MMI stuff, like definitely work with someone. I don't know how it works at Colorado Springs or in the schools here, but like pre-health advisor or people that can go through the interview with you. A lot of these like MMIs that are, you know, distinctive for different schools. They are a little bit more difficult. The prompts are a little bit more difficult. And like Amira was saying, it's very like think on your feet. And so getting some practice in for that is definitely helpful and useful. And then just like obviously be yourself and enjoy the process. And there's a lot of like collaborative stuff that goes on during interviews. Like I remember for the Colorado one, they had us build like the tallest building from sticks and other stuff. And so like, you know, be nice and be open to collaborating with other people and like work with each other and stuff like that. And it'll be okay.
And I think just from the side or the perspective of someone who didn't major in science and didn't consider healthcare until later, I think having a different major certainly helped me be a little bit more competitive, but I think equally it made me feel as if I needed to work harder in order to kind of catch up or to make it known that I was very invested in this field. So I think for those who aren't coming in with like a science degree or anything like that, I think it's important to then figure out what your kind of what we've been talking about, the passion and your story. So kind of creating that in the time that you have, even if your degree doesn't match up with like the science or whatever, it's kind of creating that story and all the activities that you do. So like volunteering or projects that you decide to hop on, all of that has to kind of create this like almost like story for like dedication towards the field in some way. And I think that for me looked like I was volunteering at a free clinic for a couple of years and was working with like a dermatology office. And so I kind of really like had to leave behind my business degree for a little bit there just to try to show that like I was very invested in the medical field, even if like no one else thought it. Like I think I was harder on myself than other people would have been, but that came with having a degree that wasn't in science, if that makes sense. But I think that was a plus and a challenge. So.
Wonderful. Thank you all for sharing your thoughts. Do we have any more questions? We've got just a couple minutes left. So one more question probably, but if not, let me know. And yeah, thank you, Jonathan and Julia, for coming. As I mentioned, this was recorded, so you are able to go back and see that first half. So I'll try to get that out up on YouTube today. But if you have any questions, feel free to either reach out to the panelists or reach out to our pre-health career coach. Her name is Sarah Philman, if you haven't met with her yet. And she will help you through all these processes and just kind of guide you. She'll also help you with your applications, help you with those personal statements and everything else that goes along with the application process. So thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you for having us. Thanks, everyone.